Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, man. The month of May is upon us. I want to give you 3 baits to have tied on. By no means the only 3 baits. You know, there's so many different things going on across our country, especially depending on where you live. You may be up north, fish just starting to come in to spawn. You may be down south and fish have been done spawning for a month. But in the most of the country in May, I think of these baits, you know, that I've got right here. And with that said, you know, just like all our monthly baits, I'm going to give all these away. You know, you guys be sure to leave a comment, be a subscriber to my channel. I'm going to mail 3 packages of 3 baits to 3 of you guys that follow the channel and follow along. So, you know, I mentioned these aren't the only 3 baits that you have tied on. Obviously, there's lots of other baits you can have tied on. And I want to do a whole nother video in and around the shad spawn because I am leaving that out. I can't narrow down the country and have a shad spawn involved and just get it to 3 baits. I just wouldn't be doing you guys justice. So, you know, I tried to pick 3 baits that I would have tied on just about anywhere I would go, no matter how far north, how far south, east and west. It's baits that I'd have tied on. And number 1 in my category is gonna be topwaters. And I narrowed it down to 3 different topwaters. You know, topwaters is just huge this time of year. Fish are feeding up, garden fry, feeding up after spawning, you know, and my number 1 topwater that I'm gonna have tied on from April all the way to the rest of the year is a Jaywalker. It's just a walking bait. It's a 3-hook version. That's the ghost white color. I like that color a lot in cloudy conditions, a little bit clearer water. You know, I like bone is another color I really like, but this bait's gonna be a bait that it literally will be in that rod box the rest of the year, and it really shines in May. You know, these fish are just getting done spawning. They're starting to school up, yet it still works shallow, you know, in and around, you know, laydowns and riprap and docks and those kinds of things. This is gonna be a bait that I can throw in even in fairly stained water. These other 2 baits that I got right here are much more clear water situations, but this one here, you know, even if I've got 12, 18 inches of visibility, I'll still catch fish on this bait. So a Jaywalker, it's gonna be one of the baits that I'm always gonna have tied on in May and throughout the rest of the year. Now, another bait that just truly starts to shine in May, it's probably the number 1 time of the year for it, is a surge shad. You know, this is a wake bait. Another name for them would be like people call them a redfin, or I don't know. This is the Berkeley's version of a surge shad. Works really, really well. They've got it weighted perfectly. You'll notice a little disc weight right there. This bait is a topwater. It looks like a build bait, like a jerk bait, but this bait is strictly a topwater. You throw it out there and you just hold your rod as high as you can hold it, and you reel it really slow. This bait is a bait that you only want to throw in clear water situations. I've caught them on Lake Oneida up in New York on this bait, and I've caught them on Guntersville. I've caught them obviously on Table Rock, Grand, everywhere in between. The one thing, or a couple things that you have to have: clear water. When I say clear water, I want 2, 3, 4, 5 foot plus visibility, even much clearer. You can call fish out of 20, 30 feet of water on this bait. The other thing I have to have is calm water. It cannot be wavy ripples. You've got to have calm water. Sunny conditions, it really seems to shine. You know, it works obviously on cloudy, calm days, but those 2 things you got to have: clear water, calm water, and you'll want to throw this out off long points, out over submerged humps, over tops of grass beds, over anything like that. I caught them up north over shipwrecks before, you know, deep shipwrecks, reeling this thing over the top, big smallmouth. I mean, it's just something that those fish really, they just like it in May, standing timber on Table Rock. It's just a bait that works, catches all sizes and big ones, but that's a surge shad or a redfin topwater bait. You reel it really slow across the top of the water. Then lastly, guys, I had to throw the Jaywalker in there. And the reason I threw this in there, you know, I'm gonna do a video all about the shad spawn, a whole different deal, but you know, something else that's going on in May, especially on that eastern seaboard, is a herring spawn. And there's no better bait than a Jaywalker when it comes to herring spawns, you know, and covering water and schooling fish. You know, this thing's tail weighted. It sits in the water like this until you start jerking it, and then you just start jerking it, and you can just make that thing literally walk in place, make a tremendous amount of commotion, but yet not cover a lot of water. It's got a lot of calling action to it. You know, it spits water in the front. It's just a great, great bait. In May, I'm gonna have it tied on, especially when I'm over there around Hartwell, Murray, Lanier, you know, those places that's got herring. You know, the month of May, this is gonna be a bait that I'm gonna have tied on. You'll notice, you know, I've got solid color baits, you know, basically just a white bottom. You know, especially with these baits that I'm calling fish up from a long ways. I pretty much want a solid colored bait. That's all they see on the bottom. There are times if it gets really clear, really sunny conditions, you know, a chrome would work here in this cane walker, just a straight chrome, or maybe more of a transparent bait. You know, with the surge shad, I'm gonna throw a bone or a white one like this, a sexy shad one, just pretty much all the time. But with all those baits, one thing to keep in mind, I'm throwing all those on braid, you know, 40, 50 pound braid, a high speed reel. I'm holding my rod up high on that surge shad. I'm gonna throw it like on a 6'9" rod. Those other two baits, the cane walker and the Jaywalker, where I can work it down, work it quick. Gotta have those baits. Those are must-haves in the month of May all across the country. Now next, I've got a jig, and not just any jig. It is going to be a swim jig. The month of May, we got bass up shallow. We got the bluegill have started spawning. Bass are still guarding fry. There's no better bait than a swim jig. You can just cover water with it. You know, it's kind of what happens after they get off that vibrating jig. You know, you can go with that swim jig. It's a little softer, a little quieter, just, you know, just a good bait. You know, this right here is a 3/8 ounce. I got a 3/8 and I got a 1/2 ounce. It's one of my favorite colors. It's a green crawl. You know, on a swim jig, I'm really trying to imitate a bluegill. That's, you know, people call it a jig. It's not necessarily a crawfish. It is a bluegill. So I'm gonna choose bluegill colors. This is actually called green crawl. I know it's got the name crawl in it, but what I like about it is it's got a little bit of orange, a little bit of green in it, and then that black living rubber. It's not a super heavy wire hook. You know, I don't want like a super light wire hook, but I don't want a super heavy wire hook because I'm casting that thing out there and I'm just swimming it back in. When I take that jig out of the package, you know, one of the things I'm gonna do is trim that skirt. And again, I'm trying to make this thing in the shape of a bluegill. So I just want to taper the sides. I just kind of hold it upside down and I trim that just a little bit like that. You can kind of see, just trim it. And what that does is it just tapers everything. So now it's all kind of at a taper. And then I will take a chigger bug. And I love this color chigger bug because it really represents a bluegill well. It's got a little bit of baby blue. It's a green pumpkin blue flash is what it's called. Mike Iaconelli developed the color. It's got his name on it, but it's Ike's green pumpkin blue flash, but it's just got a little bit of blue on the belly. And that's just so much of the times, you know, bluegill have that blue iridescent look to it that you can see right there. But I'm gonna shorten that thing up just a little bit by one segment. And then I just string that on there and I be sure to put that iridescent blue on the bottom. And there we go. So that is going to just have the natural kicks, you know, just of a bluegill coming through the water is going to displace a lot of water. This is a bait that, again, I've got it tied on starting in April. It's going to be tied on all the month of May. Anytime fish are shallow, anytime those bluegill are up there spawning, I'm going to throw this around docks, laydowns, riprap, over grass. It's just a great, great bait. I'm going to use a 3/8 ounce if I'm fishing fairly shallow, go to that 1/2 ounce if I need to get a little bit deeper or work it a little bit quicker. You know, when I'm throwing a swim jig, I'm going to throw it on fluorocarbon most of the time when I'm open water fishing it, you know, around docks, around laydowns, down riprap, those kinds of things. You know, the one time that I have to go to braid is if I'm in lily pads or like say water willows, really thick grass, then I need to go to that braid. But if I can get away with fluorocarbon, you'll land a lot more bass because you have a little bit of give with that fluorocarbon. You won't take it away from them because, you know, so many times you see that strike, you've got to hesitate just a little bit before you set the hook on it. But I'm gonna have it on a 7.3 heavy, high speed reel. And just remember, you're trying to imitate a bluegill. You know, green pumpkins, you know, this one here is a green cross. It's got green and a little bit of orange and black in it. Just really looks like a bluegill coming through the water. That's an Andy's Custom Bass Jig. I'm gonna use a 3/8 ounce most of the time. The water's really clear and I need to move it a lot faster, maybe a 1/2 ounce. But most of the time it's gonna be 3/8 ounce. If it's really thick stuff, then I'll even go down to a 1/4 ounce just to keep from getting, you know, too snagged up or get too much stuff on the bait itself. But you know, you're just gonna have to determine that yourself. So last, you know, there's lots of baits I can tell you to throw in May. You know, I've just touched on a few of them, but I have got to mention in May, a Carolina rig. It's just a great, great bait. One, let's go over the reasons why. Fish could still be spawning. You know, throwing a Carolina rig on pea gravel banks. We did a complete episode on the most overlooked, you know, area to catch spawning bass. You know, those offshore humps, those offshore points, you know, that 4 to 6 feet of water, you know. And then you have fish that are done spawning that are starting to move out. You got fish after a herring spawn, like, you know, as the day gets up, that they move out off those clay points a little bit. A Carolina rig starting in the, you know, the 1st of May through June, July is gonna be tied on right here in this rod box year round. Now the bait that I've got, that my #1 bait that I'm gonna put on a Carolina rig is just a power hog. It's just a great imitation of, you know, it could be a bluegill, could be a little crawdad. It's just a great imitation bait. You know, I like the 4-inch. If I'm around big fish, I'll use the 5-inch. You know, I'm gonna choose something just bluegill colored. You know, this right here is sprayed grass. It's gonna be a color that I'm gonna have tied on in clearer water. Another color that I got out right here is watermelon candy. Again, this is gonna be even clearer water. You can see it's just a little bit more transparent. This is gonna be really good on sunny days. This will be good the rest of the time. Something that I will do on these baits, you know, you obviously gotta pull all this off to where everything is released to where you can have all your action. I will dip these little tails in chartreuse a lot of times just to help imitate a bluegill. This is a deadly, deadly Carolina rigging bait, you know, just a small one. Now, one thing else that you can keep in mind, you know, if I'm around big fish in an area where they're feeding on bigger bluegill, I'll go with the 5-inch, you know, just a straight green pumpkin or similar colors. Again, awesome bait, you know. And another reason I think a Carolina rig it shines so many times, you know, you'll have a bluegill spawn out offshore, you know, and this is, again, just a great imitator of bluegill, but I'll dip those tails chartreuse. There are times that bigger one right there, that bigger profile will get you a lot more bites too. So keep that in mind, you know, especially like on Grand, Lake of the Ozarks, Gunnersville, some of those world-renowned lakes. I like to go with that bigger one, but somewhere in between those two right there, the Carolina rig, I'm gonna have a 36-inch leader. I'm gonna have anywhere from a 3/4 ounce to a 1 ounce weight. That is a bait that will catch a bunch of fish in May for you, I promise you. All right, guys, there it is. Those are my 3 baits that I had to narrow it down to. Tough to narrow it down for the month of May, but these baits are gonna be in my rod box just about anywhere I go across the country. Of course, there's other baits out there that'll work. It's not the only 3, but it's 3 that I will have tied on and that I can catch bass anywhere I go. So, hey, with that said, I'm gonna give these baits all away to 3 of you guys that comment, that are subscribers to the channel. So be sure you do that stuff. I want to go down through there. I'm going to randomly pick 3 winners, mail these 3 different baits out to you guys. And man, I hope you're the winner. I hope these baits help you catch more fish. And look forward to seeing you guys right here next week.